Here's a cool EQ tip for when you're mixing vocals. The first thing you'll want to do is listen to something that you like the sound of in the genre that you're working in. The studio can be a bit of a bubble sometimes, so this could be a great way to refresh our ears and give us a good place to start. So now when we switch back to our mix and give it a listen, it'll be pretty obvious what the differences are. But our ears are very adaptable and will quickly get accustomed to whatever it is we're listening to over and over. So remember to switch back and forth a few times throughout this process. So the first step now would be to make some very gradual, big picture changes. So I like to do this with more of an analog style EQ, but if you don't have one, just remember to keep the bandwidth nice and wide for whatever EQ you're using. The goal of this first pass is to make broad strokes and shape the tone relative to the reference mix. So if I listen to something that's commercially released and then I flip back to my mix, I might notice that I need to add some top end. So I want to ask myself, what kind of top end? Is it clarity in the 2 to 5K range? Or maybe I need to add some presence and air in the top end from about 5K and up with a shelf. So I'll go through and make these adjustments until I get the general tone and the feel of the vocal in place. The next pass, we're going to go through and be a little more specific and granular with our EQing. In the first pass, we might have brought up the top end and gotten the crispiness that we're looking for, but in doing so, we might have also brought up some harshness that maybe wasn't so obvious before we boosted. What I don't like to do is take a curve, boost it really high, and just sweep around until I find something. It's a good trick to use to try and hone in on a sound that you already hear, but if you're just boosting and sweeping, you're going to start to hear things that don't really need to be attenuated. So first, make sure it's something you can hear, and then use this technique to hone in on that sound. The goal here is just to smooth out the top end and pull out some of those little things that pique our ears and maybe would prevent us from making the vocal as bright or crispy as we need for that clarity. So combining these two things, we used 2 passes of EQs. The first using broad strokes to really shape the tone of what we're hearing, and the second to sort of pull out the things that maybe became a bit more obvious and a bit harsher as we made some of those changes. Hope this helps.